So what's up, guys? Another siege. This siege is against Taika 2 and Aftermath Legends. Aftermath Legends currently also a top 4 guild. I guess in most seasons top 4 guild. But in this case, we're not necessarily going to be talking about the siege offense hits. Most of the hits that I've been doing, I've been showcasing a few times. But the main thing that I actually want to talk about is siege as a whole. Like, siege as a whole has been pretty still. They haven't really been doing any updates to siege except for the one that we had last tournament, where you could actually select what the first skill of the thing is that when it starts moving and stuff, which I think is a good thing. And I also want to ask you guys to put in the comments, what would you guys like to see as a change to siege? Because I think for most people we can say that siege at current state is a bit boring. It's kind of the same. We see the same metas, like balance patches definitely do change that a bit, but the whole idea behind siege is still getting like kind of similar to same-ish. And I definitely do think that some of these added things, like the first skill, that you can select what the first skill always does. In this case, we only had it on one monster. How about we do that on all monsters, for example? So you remove like the bad RNG on those kind of things. And I think one of the main reasons why they don't want to change the Vio proc to not having multiple Vio procs in Siege is because it would get too easy. But isn't it also the case where it would get too easy because you can just expect derps or the team is derping? Like, I've seen a lot of replays where I'm like, yo, if that team didn't derp, you would have been dead. Dead as hell, bro. So yeah, that's a lot of the things with Siege. I think it's not even that the Vio procs, it's just too much RNG for like a defense. Like, if the defense goes super mental on RNG, sure, you can get a lose here and there. But in most cases, it's pretty preventable by just having the exact right team. However, I did notice, I also played Siege on my alt, and on my alt you definitely do notice it a lot more, and therefore I also do understand that people that are lower in ranks in Siege, that they tilt a lot more for like Vio procs in Siege than what I do on my main. Because on my main, it's relatively easy. You build all of these kind of special teams and you one-shot 2 units right off the get-go and you're probably good to go. However, if you're just starting off with Siege, you don't really have these kind of units or these kind of runes to do the one-shots. So you're fighting out this bruiser fight, which is very winnable. Like on my alt, a lot of these very winnable matches. However, the moment that they start proccing a little bit, you instantly lose because you can prepare for just the damage coming in once or twice, but you can't really prepare for the damage coming in like 3 times in one hit when you don't really have the rune quality or the exact right units to overcome that. So that is definitely something that I do see, where I would say that a lot of people in the lower ranks of Siege maybe dislike Siege a lot more and dislike the Vio procs because of that a lot more than what we see in the higher ranks of Siege. Because in the higher ranks of Siege, I'm just dropping this team twice and it'll GG. Like, what were you gonna do? Like, it's just, this team is just busted, and there's always going to be some busted teams out there. And if you have the resources and the units and the runes to get on with the meta and then keep like those kind of teams in all the time, then it's relatively easy. But if you don't have that, you're kind of by the mercy of like, okay, does the enemy team go super mental on procs or not? So personally, to answer the question of the title myself, what would I like to see changed in Siege? Well, I'm still not really a big fan of the 1v1v1, but I'll get to that in a second. The main thing that I would like to see changed is where we can select for all 3 units what they will do as their first skill. It's still just the first skill, but at least it makes a lot of teams... At least you could put like a Triton on Siege defense and you know exactly what it's going to do. It's not going to be OP, like, because there's definitely counters to that as well. Because let's say someone goes for like AoE strip and then it will guarantee AoE strip, so you can go for a Hey Gang, or you could go for like another unit that might just like full counter that or something like that. So it's not super OP, but maybe it's too predictable. Could be the boring part. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. But I would say reduce the Vio procs the same way that is used in RTA, where the Vio procs go down the moment that one side procced and the other side didn't proc, for example. But the main thing is, if you lower the defense quality, so by lowering Vio rates, you lower the defense quality. That's just the thing. Like, if you would just lower that and do nothing else, defense would become way too weak. And we definitely... It's also the big question, like, do you want to balance it throughout, like, the highest tier of play or the lowest tier of play or, like, somewhere in the middle? It's kind of difficult because I guess in higher rank of Siege, you have a lot less struggles with Vio than in lower ranks. That's definitely a thing. I'm 100% sure about that. If you lower the Vio rank, so you don't have like 6 procs in a row and that kind of nonsense, and while that time you also go for a upgrade of your defense, at least that you can set up that all of these units use the right skill in the first rotation. I think that's a really big improvement. And with that, it kind of can maybe help each other out to get to a point where Siege is more enjoyable to where it's not just like, I completely lost to random RNG bullshit, or the team totally didn't, or your defense is just never winning because it's never actually doing the right skills. Like in this case, it should have S2'd into an S1 with that proc, it would have maybe killed my stuff, right? So I guess I would have still won this match. That's not really the issue. Like there's things to overcome that. But if he used the right skills, he would have been able to kill something. And it's just the main thing on defense. It's so derpy, man. The defense is just super, super derpy. And I think for that reason, a lot of the defense is just simply not working. And you could say like, okay, if you make everything like non-derpy, then it will become like super heavy a cleave meta. I think it's kind of a cleave meta-ish already. So therefore you also see like a bunch of people going for counter cleaves and that kind of stuff. So does that really change too much in the meta? Maybe a little bit. But yeah, that's definitely one of those things that I would like to see changed. That's number one. So getting all 3 skills where you could select on all 3 units which skill they do first. I think that's definitely a very nice improvement already. Besides that, we have the 1v1v1. I'm still not really a big fan of it, mainly because if one guild decides to like, oh, we're gonna have you 1v1, then the third guild is gonna take the victory, or you got some like friend politics and all of that kind of blah blah nonsense. It would be nice if there's somewhat of like a penalty if you hit one guild to way more than the other guild. So something simple like that. Like you can figure it out like in how many kind of ways or shapes that would actually make sense. But I think just simply something like that, a slight penalty for hitting one guild a lot more than another guild, and that could be gaining less points, that could be that you can't hit one guild at some point that you have to keep in mind to keep that in balance or something like that. I don't know, make something out of it, but I think that would be nice in general. Just for the sake of it, that you don't get like these over, like, oh, you find, I definitely heard that from Asia server, for example. If you're fighting a guild that is from the same language as, or like the 2 opposite guilds that you're fighting are from the same language, it's very likely that they will team up against you. In Europe, I would say, like, if you're fighting a double, let's say German guild or double French guild while you're in an international guild, or you're German guild and you're fighting double French, or the other way around. Does that happen that you're more likely to be hit that way? I'm not entirely sure, in all honesty. Like in the high ranks, that's where I mostly have been at. It's more of like siege politics of who do you like, who do you not like. We definitely have like a fair share of that kind of stuff going around. I would say in current state, not as much. It used to be a lot more, but in the current state, definitely not as much. But yeah, I can definitely see those kind of things happening, and therefore it would be very nice if it would just be like slightly balanced out to where you have to start hitting the other guild at some point, that you can't just decide to dump all your like 250 hits on one guild, and on the other guild you're like, nah, you guys cool, take this victory. Because in the end, doesn't matter how good your guild is, even if you're fighting, I think if you would be fighting a G3 guild with 2 G1 guilds, like straight up 2v1ing like 100%, I think the G3 guild will probably still lose. So that's kind of the lame part about that. So yeah, I definitely hope to see some change in that. I don't really think there will be a change for that. I do think that the change for the skills might be coming at some point, that it's kind of more of a test. And then in the tournaments, they're going to do it more often. But the big question is, why just do it in the tournaments and not throughout the whole season? That's the part that doesn't make too much sense to me, in all honesty. And then the final thing, well, if you've seen it show up a few times already, Windy really has to get nerfed. I use it because it wins, and that's the only reason. Like, I like my wins, but any fire unit you put on defense is just bound to a Windy to get absolutely clapped. It's literally simply that. Any fire unit is gonna hit fully on Windy, and Windy is gonna be like, I can take a hit or 1,000. Even units like the Sarion, Like, sure, Thessarion with a few procs might actually do it. But even then, Windy is kind of fine into Thessarion as well. If you put a healer next to it, it's like, on the first hit, it's not gonna armor break. It's only going to armor break on like 50% of the time that it uses the S2 if you have like a nice cleanser next to it. So Windy still counters Thessarion. Windy counters pretty much all of the fire units out there with a really heavy amount. So yeah, would he be necessary in lower ranks to actually get like your safe hits in and therefore people can actually get their hits in? For low ranks, I would say maybe he's somewhat of a must because otherwise people can't really get like their proper siege hits in. I'm not too sure about that. Did use him quite some on my alt as well, but I think there's other options as well. Especially like in the lower ranks, if you get a lot of procs on your Windy, he's not gonna do too much as well. But yeah, I'm not too sure because in the end, Windy is mainly good if you have good additional damage artifacts as well. So I'm guessing not everyone at the low ranks really has that. But yeah, Windy is definitely a unit I hope to see get nerfed because we have the balance patch. People expect it about next week, maybe next week or the week after. Windy is definitely one of those that I hope to be in there, and we started using it in RTA as well. It's actually not a meme in RTA, it's actually kind of good, and that's the stupid part about it. The unit is actually stupidly good. And it's also useful for arena defense, so it's used in a lot of places. So that could be the thing that it maybe triggers where they would say, like, okay, maybe we have to tune it down a little bit. And then finally make any fire units. Because Carcano, you just windy them. Thessarion, you just windy them. Perna, you just windy them. Any other fire unit on defense, we don't really see them. Why? Because Windy is there. Like, any fire unit on defense is just bound to get shit on by a freaking Windy. And we've seen that a little bit too long. So I definitely do hope that they start tuning down Windy a little bit. Maybe still make it usable, but not as spammable or something. I don't really know. Do something to it. So those are my 3 takes that I would like to see changed in Siege. So number 1 is being able to select the skill all the time and maybe include like the Bio nerf in that. Number 2 is somewhat of a balancing that you can't go full force 2v1. And number 3 is, well, the balance patch kind of Siege related, and that would start with nerfing a Windy. So guys, let me know in the comments what you think would be your recommended changes for Siege, or are you just fine with as it is? Definitely curious to read about that as well. Maybe I'll use that as some of the content for the video next time to read about, like, okay, what are your changes for Siege that you would like to see? Maybe we'll get some cool ideas together. So definitely appreciate you guys watching, and see you as always in the next one.